Welcome to Frap Rap. I'm your host, Aaron Goldman, aka AG, the artist formerly known on AOL Instant Messenger as GDogg with 8 Gs. Yes, 1 through 7 were taken. All right, 25 years ago, I was an AE at an ad network called L90, and my biggest client was Starcom IP. Every Thursday, I'd invite everyone in Chicago at 35 West Wacker to meet me at the Cozy across the street for coffee, and for each person that came, I'd do a freestyle rap about them. Hence the name Frap Rap. Each episode, I track down another OG IPer to reminisce about the good old days and see what they're up to now. Today, my guest in studio is Jeff Marshall. Jeff, that's your cue. There he is. What's up, man? Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Where's my squiggle?
Welcome
Cozies.
Yeah.
When you say cozies, I want a squiggle.
The squiggle. The thing I loved the best was, remember they would have like the free little samples? They would cut up the bread into little strips.
Oh, yes.
And you
yes,
could like
yes.
go
so
up and get one while you're waiting. Yeah, exactly.
You weren't making any money. It was like, let's get a free meal.
That was the move. Well, it's great to have you here in studio. This is the first episode of Frap Rap, and I thought who better to start it with than the man who was there pretty much from the beginning.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, you know, well, as we go through, the whole goal here is to try and find as many people as we can to come on and talk about the good old days. Most of them will probably be virtual. This just happens to work out that we live close to each other, so thanks for dropping by the crib.
It's because I'm an old head. We couldn't get the technology figured out, and we said, we live close enough, so I'll come over.
Yeah.
So.
But anyway, I guess we'll look over here. So we're on YouTube as well as audio. Anyone ever tell you got a face for audio, Jeff?
Oh, boy. Yeah, a forehead for audio. Look at that. Yeah.
At any rate, so yeah, great to have you here. Why don't you tell everyone sort of like, how did you come into the picture with IP? What was it like when you started? And we'll build from there.
Sure. You know, what was the year? It was 99, and I was just finishing up grad school. I was doing it at night, and I was, gung-ho thinking, everything in this .com stuff was like blowing up. It was so exciting. Like, a ton of my classes were talking about it, kind of like people are talking about AI now. It was kind of like the same kind of hype. And I was like, I'm dead set. I got to go to Silicon Valley. I got to make this thing happen. And it just so happened right at the same time, a good buddy of mine who I worked with previously at Starcom, Tim Harris. Hopefully he gets on the invite for this show as well. I don't know. He's kind of sketchy, but he had just gotten hired. He left Starcom, went to work for a .com-ish company. It was a CD-ROM, interactive CD-ROM magazine. They had those things back then. Launched CD-ROM. And he was coming back, and he was being hired by this mysterious guy, Rashad Tabakawala. And he said, why don't you come join me? And I'm like, I don't know, man, Silicon Valley, like, staying here. And he had me sit down and meet with Rashad, and it was like over from there. I mean, Rashad just, blew me away. And I was like, hey, I can stay in Chicago, do kind of this .com thing at the same time. I thought, why not? It's best of both worlds. It was awesome.
Well, we'll definitely have to get Harris on. I hope to get Rashad on at some point too. I kind of think he'd be a good closer. So we're kind of starting, we've got good bookends here. And my goal, actually, I still have the old IP org chart here from back in the day. And my goal is to work my way through it and see if we can kind of cross off everyone. There's a great sandwich shop called Chicago Bagel Authority, CBA. And people would take the menu and sort of, you'd have to work your way through and print, you'd get the printed menu, and you would mark each time you had one of their sandwiches. And then when you completed it, very few people did, they would post it up on the wall.
Oh, nice.
In the CBA. So that's what's going to happen here.
Is your name up on the wall there? Did you
make
it?
I never made it. I did a fun story, though. At one point, they were in danger of losing their lease. I think there had been... actually, maybe there had been a fire or something. They were raising money. I forget what it was for. They were raising money. And if you donated money, then they would put a sandwich named after you on the menu for like a week. So as we'll get into, my nickname at the time was GDogg. And so I had them make the doggy style sandwich. And it was tuna, pepperoni, and cheese. And they do steamed bagel sandwiches. That's kind of their gimmick. So
Sounds good.
Back
Sounds
in the
like
day.
a good one.
But let's go. We're back. So back to the IP early days. First of all, what did IP stand for, and how was it created?
Oh boy, IP stood for a lot of things. Some overt and some not so overt and out there. But technically, it stood for Internet Protocol. we had this little game that we used a little bit in early presentations with clients where we would say like what it stood for. It'd be integrated planning, or it'd be interactive planning, or all these kinds of different things. And then there were some funny jokes in there that, may be appropriate for other audiences. But Internet Protocol. It was Starcom Internet Protocol.
Got it. And that was, so I remember where I came into play on the rep side. I had actually come out of school and I had 2 job offers. One was from Starcom and the other was from L90. And, it was the same amount of money, and my calculus was, all right, I think this like internet thing's going to be a big deal. And I asked Starcom if I could get placed in IP. And what they said was, you got to go through, I think they called it PIT, like you kind of go through a general sort of rotation, you get onboarded, and then they decide where to put you. And they couldn't guarantee me that I'd end up in the internet group. And I was like, I really think this is going to be the thing. I want to, start my career in it. And so I ended up not taking that job. I took the sales planner job at L90. At any rate, now here we are.
Worked out for you. It worked out great for you. Come on.
But back then, of course, you had to have, it had to be a separate group, right? Because it was a new medium, and so how did you build it in a way that was like able to serve clients who were thinking about their marketing and media plans holistically, but there was this kind of new thing coming up here. You had to have some expertise for it, right?
Well, let me go a couple of steps back and talk a little bit about the kind of the history. So Rashad, who we mentioned before, he had a long time kind of history in kind of being interactive and forward. So he's from India. He went to college in India, and then he came to the United States. He went to University of Chicago Business School, and when he came out of business school, he got a job offer at Leo Burnett, and started as a lowly account executive. He loved his time there, but he was always kind of doing forward-facing things. So he was doing this like database marketing in Leo Burnett, and it really got him into the place where he was seen as kind of futuristic. And so when Leo Burnett wanted to get into the interactive game, they bought into a company called Giant Step, and the Hennigan brothers over there were running it. And Leo Burnett wanted to put one of their own over into Giant Step to kind of like help make sure that it was serving Leo Burnett purposes as well as growing the Giant Step business. So he was in very early at Giant Step, very successful interactive marketing company. After he'd done that for a few years, then Jack Clues kind of saw him and his potential, saw the idea for doing, internet media, online media, and said, I want to tap Rashad and see if he can head this up. So he brought Rashad into Starcom Media Vest Group at the time, and said, let's start this up. His first hire was Tim Harris from the interactive, company he was working at. There was an associate in the company, Sarah Cook. And then from there, like I got pulled in, from, Tim Harris saying like, talk to this guy. So it was very much kind of, organic, but the idea always was like, we had to be like specialists and dedicated to what the space was. How do we build this out? Originally just being like a handful of people, it wasn't any big deal, but as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, it became its own business unit and its own company. And it really had to do that to operate differently, separately. Like a quirky thing that you wouldn't think's a quirky thing, and it's kind of funny to look back on it now, is investing in technology for us. Like we needed to be technology forward with our clients. In Starcom, everything was standardized. If you're working across 500 employees, like you couldn't offer BlackBerries to 500 employees, but for our group, like we had to be like futuristic. Like we had to have BlackBerries. We had to be connected to our email and know what this technology was doing. So Rashad had to massage things to get it created as a separate business unit, separate company, so he could do things almost as simple as that. But then also just operate differently on behalf of our clients as well.
So did you have the beeper BlackBerry or the one with the full keyboard?
I had the full keyboard.
Nice.
Like at the beginning, there were some people who had. Do you remember AOL Sidekicks?
Sure. Oh yeah.
We had AOL Sidekicks. Like we were definitely some of the first.
That was the one that kind of went
I
sideways, right?
I think it didn't it flip out?
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
it have a top that kind of flipped out, and then the keyboard exposed itself when you.
Yeah.
It was almost like a slide version instead of a flip phone. It was like a slide kind of thing.
I think Paris Hilton was like the spokesperson. Hers was like bedazzled or something.
I think so. Yeah. I think you're right.
somewhere in here, and you're getting a treat here, Jeff, in my home office.
I
So
am.
most people are only...
I'm seeing behind the scenes people.
Correct, but it's like, well, one side right next to the screen is all like my fidgets and stress balls to keep me occupied while so I can't be multitasking on my calls. But somewhere in here, I'm going to pull it out. I think I have the old BlackBerry.
Oh my gosh. I think I finally did get rid of all my old
There she
devices
is.
at some point. Oh
Look at
boy,
this.
look at that thing. Oh,
Full keyboard and
boy,
everything.
that brings back some bad memories. Like, I think that I had like calluses on my thumbs from typing those
Now,
things.
it was Research in Motion, right? RIM was the
Rim,
maker.
yeah,
Were they a
and
client?
they were a client of
Yeah.
ours. They became a client. They weren't an early client of ours, but they did become a client of ours for sure.
Okay. And
Brandon Starcom ran that business for a long time. Yeah.
now, who were some of the other early clients that you worked on?
Boy, so McDonald's was one of the early ones. Miller Coors. I worked on Hallmark and Network Solutions. Network Solutions was probably our biggest early pitch because they were e-commerce at the time, and they ended up being our biggest. They were probably our biggest team at any given point.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Starcom
So
IP's
back to the
existence.
org chart, and we should talk about this
Nobody
too.
even
'cause,
knows what Network Solutions is today.
NetSol, the
NetSol, yeah.
domain registrar. But on the org chart, I always remember like there would be, each account would usually have like a row, right? And each row was like, okay, who was the director on the account, associate director, manager. Let's actually read the others. Assistant,
Super
and then down now.
assistant.
Oh, IC, interactive coordinator.
Interactive coordinator,
Yeah.
sure.
But then the NetSol would have like 6 rows because there'd be like, 8 ICs and 6 assistants and multiple managers. And I remember they ran a ton of pop-ups and pop-unders.
Oh, the pop unders. They performed great. Like, come on, people will click through on them. They generated a lot of revenue for Network Solutions.
They did, and a lot of commission for me as a salesperson. At L90, we called them power ads.
Oh yes,
And
Power Ads was the good name for them.
And our innovation was, as opposed to, so pop-ups were, I don't know how much explaining we want to do on this podcast. There's going to be a lot of like insider and time-dated references here, but I think the audience that's going to be tuning in for these is probably people who were there at the time. So I'm not going to do too much. Did you watch or listen to Smartless podcast?
Of course,
See, now that was like explain it for Tracy, right? Sean's sister, like who doesn't know the industry. I don't know how much of that we'll do in this pod, but anyway, Power Ads was, instead of launching a splash page, so the creative for a pop-up would usually be like an ad unit. But instead of having an ad unit, we just launched the actual landing page on networksolutions.com in its own window. So we skipped the step of you having to click on an ad to get to the site. We just launched the site in a new browser, either above the browser you were looking at or hidden below it.
It sounds like a combination of like AI and MFA.
Well, and in fact, what we were really doing, and we didn't realize it at the time, was cookie bombing, because
Yes, we were.
we would have the
Yes, we
landing
were.
page, sort of subtly there, and it would then make that person tracked as a visitor to the site. And if at any time in whatever the window was, they ended up buying a domain from NetSol,
We got credit for
we
it.
got credit for it. So
But we did touch them. We touched them with the messaging, so like should get credit.
amen.
Some kind of credit.
Fractional at best.
Yes,
But we'll
yes.
take it. Okay, so we're in the early days of IP. You've stood up the group. Let's actually go back to the org chart, because
Sure.
I'm curious how both we'll talk about it like literally and figuratively. Literally, I remember the org chart was like coveted. If you could get your hands on it, it was like gold for people on our side of the aisle, because we could then figure out, okay, who's on what accounts. And a lot of other agencies at the time wouldn't share their org charts. Their policy, OMD down the street was not putting out their org chart. You really had to like work your way through the system to find the right people. But you kind of had a policy where you put it out there. And
Yeah.
what was the calculus there?
Yeah, I think that I give like 99% of most of the credit for a lot of this stuff to Rashad, because he just has such a forward thinker perspective. Like, those of you who don't know Rashad, you should go find him on, like, he puts out his free newsletter every single week. And so it was just this, like, you should put it out there. It's a client first mentality. It's a, like, I should be reachable. I should make this easier for you, like sales community, clients, whatever it is, to get a hold of us. And it manifests itself in big ways, like our org chart going out to our partners saying like, hey, Aaron, like, I want to make sure you know who you should talk to so that you're not wasting your time, but our people aren't wasting our time saying, no, I'm the wrong person either. But all the way to like AOL Instant Messaging handles. Like my handle was in my email signature, and some people thought I was crazy because they're like, do you want your computer just popping off all day long with people messaging it? And I was like, if somebody needs to get a hold of me, I want them to be able to get a hold of me. And I'm like, just because they can reach out, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to respond immediately.
Right.
But if there's an emergency, if there's some, like if your website went down or your ads aren't working or like whatever it is, like you needed to be ready in real time. And that was just a philosophy that, maybe Rashad didn't say it directly, but like he emanated those kinds of like philosophies that manifested themselves in how a lot of business just operates now, with transparency and being forward and giving things away for free so that you build relationships and build your business.
Yeah, well, at the time it was super novel, and I remember it was Tanya Graham who was the admin for the group.
Tanya Graham.
She was the keeper of the org chart. Every month I would kind of like hit her up. Hey,
she
Tanya,
was a tough one too, though. She was a tough one. She was a good gatekeeper.
Well, I hope to get her on the pod at some point too. That would be super fun. So if anyone is still in touch with Tanya, let me know. I would love to have her on and we could talk about it. Let's talk more now, figuratively, from an org chart perspective. As you're building this group, how are you thinking about the roles and the evolution, and kind of take us through maybe, you can put the time horizon. Well, actually, let's jump to the end and then back up. How long were you at IP for yourself?
So I was there from, I landed there in the first month of its existence, and I was there until it kind of, was shuttered. It's not, I guess it's still somewhat in existence because like Starcom and doing interactive is there. But at a certain point, we had made the decision to reintegrate it into Starcom to make it, a core function, not a separate business unit, not a separate like business, but to be, a skill set that sat inside of, the teams. And then, like everything else, it's like a pendulum that kind of like goes back and forth. It's like, do you need it to be integrated? Do you need it to be standalone? And like we're like the industry's still going through that with every single kind of like functional thing. But I was there until we made that decision. And at that point, I had folded out one of the companies that we had created. Starcom IP kind of kicked off a lot of different companies. But one of the companies was an interactive creative agency called Pixel, which then merged with Starcom Entertainment and Connective Tissue at MediaVest to form Liquid Thread. It's still kind of in its own existence as well as content specialist within the group. But that all strung together. So I was there beginning to end.
And is that like, what are we talking, 15 years?
I was within the company 16 years.
Okay.
I was traditional media for the first 4, so that leaves 12. And I was probably out of IP for 5, so IP probably existed like for 8 years.
Okay.
Like existed. I mean, like I said, it's still existing in lots of different forms, and
it lives in you.
It does.
So, and at its height or peak, how many people? Did you hit over 100 people?
I think we were 115, 116
Okay.
at one point. I was telling Aaron before we got on here, Aaron Vogel needs to show up for this pod because she kept one of these org charts, and kind of from that height, that 115 or 110 or something, like there's an org chart. She started crossing people's names off as they left, and I know she still has it. So I hope she is on this, and I hope she brings it.
All right, cool. Yes, we'll have to get her on early too, so we can compare the notes. But yes, my goal would be to get to every one of them. So settle in, folks. We're gonna have 115 episodes of season 1 of Frap Rap here. And back to AOL for a second. I mean, that was literally so every Thursday I would get on AIM, and one at a time, because you couldn't do.
Yeah, there's no group
blast it.
messaging. Right?
Yeah.
There was no group messaging.
I would just go down the list of everyone at IP, and I would say Frap Rap ? Frap Rap ? To see if they were free to come. And that, everyone by then knew that was the sign. You go down to Cozy, come on in, get your squiggle, and then yes, I would rap. So we'll come back to the rap at the end. I also want to do a speed round with you, but before we get into that, let's. So We talked about quickly, we got to the end of your journey and IP's journey where it kind of got then baked into the rest of the practice. So two-part question. What do you think made IP so unique, and what do you think its legacy will be for the industry?
Ooh, wow. Remind me the second part of the question, because the first part of the question is pretty big. So the first part of the question is like, what made it special? I really think, and I know a lot of the people who were at Starcom IP at the time, have shared this exact comment, but it was lightning in a bottle. It was absolutely lightning in a bottle. It was a specific time and place where the world was changing. The world needed something new. You had this special person in Rashad kind of at the helm, and it really just attracted people who then attracted other people that were all kind of like-minded. But the philosophy behind it, it really was about, how do I bring diversity of thinking, diversity of thought, diversity of approach to the table that can create something new. The media industry has been around, advertising agencies and media as a function has been around for decades at this point, right? But the reality is that it really needed to be thought about differently, to be, something needed to be created anew. And so that set the foundation, and then Rashad kind of filled it in and said, he would say land of misfit toys, and we adopted that as a saying to say, like, we're the land of misfit toys. A lot of the people that we brought over from Starcom, and I'll reference one that started as an IC, an internet coordinator, Shelby Seville, who is now the CEO of Starcom. Like, there were these people that were like proudly weird and different and said, I want to go do something weird and different because this has been done before. And we just attracted a lot of other people who said, I want to learn something new. I want to be about creating something new. And you just brought wonderful people into the company, like Aaron Petty we were talking about before, Chandra Panley, like Sunil Radia. Like, they're all going and doing great and amazing things now because they were those people who, they would have been the people that were hanging out in Indiana for about a year and then said, no, cool, I need to go further west. They would have gotten in their wagons, they would have circled them up and said, great, like, let's go out west because there seems to be something new and interesting out there. Those are the same kinds of people that, again, that lightning in a bottle that just happened, that, the people's what made it possible, but Rashad was the spark that created it all.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so part two then was the legacy, or maybe another way of asking that question is like, what do you think the industry would be like had it not been for IP?
There's a saying, and I know I'm probably going to get it wrong. There's something about you overstate your legacy in the short term and you understate it in the long term, or one of the, I can't remember what it is.
That sounds good.
But it feels like we genuinely thought we were changing the world back then. Like, we thought we were right, and to a certain extent we were, but a certain extent, we were just one of, a group of people that, all of us were trying to do this new thing, and if we hadn't happened, there were 10 other companies doing similar things that would have made it happen. But I do think where our legacy is probably bigger than we thought is, you simply look at a company like Publicis. You look at the growth engine behind Publicis today. It's the technology. It's those business units that are part of the technology. It is, all the companies that they're acquiring, from Epsilon to, Influential, Captivate, like all of these companies. That stuff was made possible because of the ground that we broke back in 1999, 2000. Like, we broke that ground. We showed a holding company a path to doing this. And if it wasn't for that path, Publicis might not be in the position that it was in today. Like, Publicis is clearly the leader and ahead of everybody else in so many of these regards. And a lot of that is instilled in the culture and the mentality of saying, let's go be the first, like, let's go create the new thing. And if we can't create the new thing, we need to bring things in, whether that's people or buying companies. Like, that mentality was started then and really just kind of set it on fire. I may be overstating that, but I do genuinely believe with, many, many years of hindsight, I think that a lot of people would probably agree with that.
Yeah, it's well said. All right, so let's catch up on from when you left to where you are now. Give us like the career update in a couple minutes and catch us up to your current role.
Sure. So made the progression from Starcom IP to Pixel to Liquid Thread. From there, I had a cup of coffee at AOL with Tim Armstrong, Jeff Levig, and then went over to NBC Universal. 11 years NBC Universal doing digital sales, like you started in the business. I was like, that sounds like fun. So I did that. And now I've moved over to ad tech. So I'm still making my progression through the industry, learning new and different things. I'm at Integral Ad Science, head of retail and CPG, leading the charge on client acquisition and that in those industries, and really bringing expertise for the sales organization in those regards. Again, like I continue to have this perpetual motivation of trying to learn and new and different things, and that's what I'm doing today. So pretty happy about it.
I love it. Yeah, we'll as we work our way through and have folks on, I think we'll see. I mean, there's certainly the folks who stayed within the agency world, and even some who stayed within that same agency group. Some who went to the dark side, over to sales. And I do think there was like a span of a couple years where that became like the common move. Once
for sure.
They started reporting back to their friends like, hey, you basically do the same job and make twice as much. We're just planning campaigns here, but we get a commission for doing it. And then folks who once ad tech became a thing, became some of the pioneers in there, and yourself included. How about on the life front? I know we happen to be neighbors, which is awesome. So I get to see you around town, but catch everybody up on what's going on with you and the fam.
Oh my gosh, I've got my twins have graduated from college, so we're empty nesters. But what we did when we were empty nesters from high school is I guess we followed them. They went to schools in Colorado, one at CU and one at CSU, and so we moved to Colorado, and we were out there for 4 years. It was great. The weather is 1,000 times better in Colorado than Chicago. But, what brought us back is really the people and, the industry. Like, to be honest with you, like the industry is not as strong out there as it is in Chicago and New York and those kinds of places. So the people brought us back. So we just got back in September of last year and renovating a house, hopefully going to be in it soon, and I'll just be a few blocks over that way.
I love it. Well, the next one we'll do by you. Actually, that brings us to our apartment crawl segment, which is something I want to do in each episode here. For those who were around and remember it, we have our red Solo cups here in studio in honor of the occasion. But the IP apartment crawl was legendary. This was where people would host in their apartments, and we would sort of work our way from like one to the next. How many would we hit in a night? Maybe like 4 or 5?
Oh my gosh. I mean, a minimum of 3. I don't know if I ever made it past 3. I didn't make it to as many people, but I definitely didn't make it more than 3, but I know they went further than 3.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Shelby. She was always she had the strategy, because when she once she started being pretty senior within the group and having multiple reports, she kind of okay, I go for like the first 2, and then I leave, and then
always a smart one.
Everyone. Yeah. So at any rate,
we should have known then where she'd be now.
Yeah. All right, but I want to do so the apartment crawl, for the purposes of the pod, is going to be our lightning round. Okay. All right. So I'm going to just fire away at some quick questions. First thing that comes to your mind. No wrong. What do they say? No stupid answer, just stupid people. No, that's not what they say. But anyway, let's raise the glasses.
Yes,
cheers.
Yes. Cheers.
And all right,
I did have one quick story. It wasn't quite apartment crawl, but it is Starcom IP lore.
Let's hear it.
Share. So,
for sure.
So not tied to an apartment crawl, but we did like to go out to other places as well, not just our own apartments. That was the efficient way to do it. But every once in a while we'd go someplace. And there was this legendary place called Life is Too Short. For those of you who don't know Life is Too Short, it is no longer in existence, but it was over on the river in a kind of a crappy part of town. It's nice now, I think, but it's like in a crappy part of town. And it literally it looked like you were going into some kind of like shack or something, but then it opened up and it was this nautical themed like bar that was like really fun. And we went there a couple of times, and one of them was legendary because one of the things we like to do when we go out, or maybe it was one of the things that Art Sindlinger really liked to do when we went out, is to try to pay people to do things that made him laugh. Like, this was just an art thing. This is like, anybody who knows art, this is great. But so he got it in his mind that he wanted to pay somebody. Again, remember, this place was on the river. And he said, I'm going to pay somebody if they jump in the river. And it started to be this, well, how much money? And he was like $20. And people are like, no, it's not worth it, not worth it. So he started taking up a collection of people and got a collection of money. And he got 2 takers. Kiki,
I know. Yeah, and Vogel, right?
Christy Westendorf. Did Vogel do it? I thought
who was
Buchacher.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But there might have been more than that because like there was money's involved. People got in, but I remember Kiki and Buchacher jumped in. But here's at Life's Too Short, they know this happened, so they were like policing us, and they wouldn't let anybody actually get close enough to jump into the river from Life's Too Short. So of course we're we got a lot of ingenuity, and they're like, there's a bridge right there. How about you just go over to the bridge and jump off the bridge? So Kiki went over and literally like walking across this metal bridge in Chicago.
It's like a 30, 40-foot drop,
I mean,
right?
at least. I mean, it's above the water. And the thing about it is like they have barges going down this river. It's like this is actually dangerous. But yeah, that was one of my favorite.
That is what, yes.
Art Sindlinger and Starcom IP stories of outside the office escapades.
Yeah, we're going to have to get Art on, find out what other things he paid people to do. We'll have to have Kiki and Dan on to get their recollection.
The other one, somebody just reminded me, one of the apartment crawl stories that I thought was really funny was at Chris Negron's apartment.
Cappy.
So Cappy had, this was like early days of this, there was a camera on the front door of his building, and he invited everybody over. So it's apartment crawl, right? Everybody's showing up. They covered the doorknob to the main building with Vaseline. And so then they just turned on the camera to just like watch people try to get in the door with Vaseline.
That is hysterical. Yeah, that's classic.
Silly stuff.
Yes.
Silly stuff. So now the lightning round.
On brand for Cappy, though. We'll have to have him on.
Yes,
this is going to be great.
Every
time another story comes up, it's another lead for someone we got to get on the pond. All right. So apartment crawl. Speed round.
Okay.
We mentioned this earlier, AOL Instant Messenger. What was your AIM handle?
JeffJLM.
JeffJLM.
And I had that, like, I got that on Emma, like, there were 3 of them. It was AOL, MSN, and Yahoo Instant Messenger. All 3 of them, I just got JeffJLM.
What?
And it was the same on all 3 of them.
You know you were in early when you were able to secure that, and you didn't have to get GDogg with 8 Gs. Who was your first boss at IP?
Rashad was my first boss, and only boss at Starcom IP.
Who was your favorite client?
Oh gosh, that's like, who's your favorite kid? I don't know if I can do that. Person or company? Like what?
You can choose. It could be a company.
I tended to really actually enjoy the really tough clients. Like, I don't know, I was a glutton for punishment. So there was this woman at Network Solutions. Her name was Aggie Antetta, and she was so tough on us. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed her. At Hallmark, it was Paul Inman. For another time, I got a good like email flub story with Paul Inman. And then at Allstate, Pete Stoutenberg was awesome, but he was tough as can be as well. Like, I always like the tough clients. That's so those are the guys that really got up in my business about making sure that we were as good as we said we were.
I love it. All right. If you could have worked on any client, well, I guess you touched all clients to some degree, right? Was there one client? Was there one like your white whale that you wish you could have worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I touched every client, which means I didn't touch a lot of clients like in a meaningful way, right? I would say the client that I saw people having the most fun on, and I wish I would have been able to kind of jump in and do stuff because it was just fun, was Miller Coors. They did a couple of these like just really super first of their time. They did a takeoff of like fantasy football for a draft of like picks for things, and I don't know, like it was just they always seemed to have budget for the fun, new, interesting, never been done before things that clients always ask for but never really actually fund. Yeah. So that would have been a good one.
Yeah. And was it true that like you could, when you were out, if you worked on that account and you were out, as long as you were buying Miller products, you could expense it? Or is that just what they... It's kind of like...
I would say if you were out and you couldn't buy competitive brands ever. Like you just couldn't buy competitive brands.
I guess
or be seen with a competitive brand in your hand.
Yeah. You could, I guess you could have just had a rep pick up your tab. You weren't buying your own beers back then anyway.
There were a lot of reps buying our tabs. Thank you.
And speaking of reps, present company excluded, who was your favorite vendor?
Oh, geez. Total old school person. I love her to death. Terry Silverstone. She was over at like Cartoon Network and like that, bunch of stuff. The reason why she was just an interesting character. But so my wife and I, it was hard for us to get away on a vacation because we had a dog, and she offered to babysit our dog one time, and we were gone for a week, and we gave her enough food for like 10 days. When we got back, she said she ran out of food about 5 days in, so she started buying like wet dog food for the dog. We were like, holy cow, who is this dog? We got back. Our 25-pound dog had gained like 7 pounds in a week. And I think it might have been because she was smoking pot around the dog too. You get the munchies when you...
That's funny. And by the way, we'll have to come back to this. We'll have to find someone who worked on Philip Morris. But this is the era when you could smoke in the well, not pot, but tobacco.
For sure. And Leo Burnett just used to pay the fines to be able to smoke in the offices.
Wild. We need to have Margaret Bell on. She's going to be the one I ask about that one.
Bell. Oh my gosh.
All right. So to close the show, we're going to do our Frap rap. So back in the day at Cozy, I would do a freestyle rap off the top of the dome for every person that came. I would incorporate their name or their outfit or whatever else was going on. For this version, you're going to give me 3 keywords, and I'm going to turn them into a rap. And since you're in person here, write them down on this little card here. And I'm going to do my best Harry Mack impression.
Ooh, Harry Mack, yes. If you don't know him, look him up. Let's do that.
Okay.
We'll do...
Oh my goodness! Can you read that handwriting? What does that say? Oh, banner, like a banner ad. Okay,
yeah,
cool. Can do.
Come on. We're just gonna do that.
I love it. Okay.
We're just gonna do that too.
All right.
Why
this
not?
one says Rashad.
And let's do because you asked the question about the client.
Miller Coors. Okay. Now this was pre-merger, right? They were competitors back then, weren't they?
I do think they were. I think they might have been merger while we were working the business. But yes, that's a good point. So Miller, maybe it's just Miller.
That's okay. I'll work it on.
Miller Brewing.
All right. No, you're cut off. No more words. All right. I'm going to keep my hands up because sometimes people accuse me now of using AI to write my raps.
I'd be here to witness it, though. I'd be here to witness it.
That's true. We do have...
Am I holding this for you?
Hold them for the camera.
I'm holding them.
Yeah. Because if we were on if we were recording this virtual, I'd be looking on the screen to do it. All right. Here we go. A little higher there, Jeff. Yep. Boom. Here we go.
Bad handwriting. And it's backwards.
I'm going to start with my beatbox. Yo, I do it up. And we start to clap. You know we do it up with the old Frap rap. It's AG here with Marshall too. And we're taking it back to the old school. Back in the day of pop-ups and unders, everybody knows there were a few blunders. We heard some stories, we heard some tales. You put the banner ad up and you get your white whale. That count that you really wanted to land back in the day. Miller Coors, you gotta look my way. It was a lot of fun to work on. Everybody knew it. And next thing you know, with the rhyme, I'ma blew it. But we heard one thing about the first person at IP who was the big story. His name is Rashad, and he's still around. He's still doing his thing. He won't go long. I will stop my song. I'll rap another time. Peace out. Jeff Marshall. Drop it on a dime, baby. Thank you, man.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
All right, Little Rusty, Working Out the Cobwebs, episode 1. But I want to thank you, Jeff, for being the first guest on Frap Rap. It was awesome catching up with you. And we'll see you next time on Frap Rap with GDogggggggg. Thanks, dude.